What if the words written in your medical chart aren't the whole story? They're certainly not the ending. So this week we're exploring why your diagnosis is just one chapter. It's not the entire book. And so join me as we talk about reclaiming hope, rediscovering who you are, and learning to see your health through a very different lens. I refuse to believe you're broken. Welcome to Every Symptom Has a Story. I'm Wendy Handy, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, health consultant, educator, and lifelong student of functional health. I believe every symptom has a story. Every body leaves clues, and I believe that your body has an incredible capacity to move toward healing when we create the right conditions that allow it to do what it was designed to do. And each week we'll make complex health understandable, and we'll explore the science, the stories, and the practical steps that help you become your own best health advocate, because understanding changes everything. So let's make this make sense. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Every Symptom Has a Story. I'm Wendy Handy, and I'm so very grateful that you're here with me today. If you listened to episode 1, we talked about one simple but very life-changing idea, and that is that every symptom has a story. And today I want to build on that with something that I wish someone had told me years ago. And that is that a diagnosis tells you what you have, but it doesn't tell you who you are. Because somewhere along the way, so many of us begin to introduce ourselves by our diagnosis. And sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes it's not even that blunt, but it comes out. Somehow it comes out in conversation when you meet somebody. I have Hashimoto's. I have ulcerative colitis. I'm a diabetic. I have chronic fatigue. And those diagnoses are real. I don't make anything... I make no light of that, because they are real and they are very important, but they just help guide the treatment. They're never meant to be who you become, and they're never meant to be your identity. And, when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis back in 2007, I honestly felt like someone had just handed me a new identity, because I felt like it was almost like everything changed for me, like I was changed, like I was different in some way. And every decision that I made revolved around that, right? And so with ulcerative colitis, the things that, the decisions that I made were around things like, where could I eat? Where might there be a bathroom close by? And would I make it through my whole workday? And sometimes I even ask the question, would I ever even feel normal again? And it makes your world become very small. I mean, my world became very small, and it was almost like I was withdrawing. But because, and not because, someone told me it had, but because fear slowly started making decisions for me. And it wasn't just Wendy anymore. It was Wendy with ulcerative colitis. And when I look back, honestly, at that time, it kind of breaks my heart, because I missed some opportunities, and I missed some things in life, and I missed a lot of joy during that time. And because although my diagnosis did affect my body, obviously it can't not, right? But I slowly allowed it to define my life. And maybe you felt that same way too. Maybe your diagnosis has become the first thing that you think about when you wake up and you open your eyes in the morning before your feet ever hit the ground. Maybe it's changed how you see yourself or how you make decisions. And maybe that you've started believing that this is simply who you are now. And if that's where you are, I want you to know, I get it. I understand, because I've been there. Now, what changed everything for me wasn't that my symptoms went away overnight, because that clearly was not the case. They didn't. And I mean, it really took me quite some time before I ever actually got to feeling quote unquote normal again. But what did change was the way that I started to look at them. And then when I began, working as, in functional medicine or as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, something unexpected happened. And I wasn't only interested in my diagnosis. I wanted to know something. I wanted to know the story. And my story was I asked questions very differently. Things that no one had ever asked me before, certainly not in the conventional medicine world. And what was happening in my life before these symptoms started? How was my sleep, for example? And something that I never really paid that much attention to. Didn't really think it was, I thought it was important, but I didn't know how important. And the stress, right? I think some of us go through life with this stress, and it's almost a badge of honor. The more stress you have, the more productive you are, or the more successful you are, or whatever. Looking back, it's crazy. And then, what was I eating? When it all happened, what was I eating? And then the biggest question of all, what changed, right? Like, what was different? And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had a diagnosis. I didn't feel like that was me, right? I felt like a person. And honestly, that's what gave me hope before I began healing. And that's what kept me going. That's what kept me pushing. And even when things didn't feel like they were going right, or I'd hit a plateau, or all of the things, it kept me going because I was no longer that diagnosis. And so one of the biggest lessons that I learned in all of this is that a diagnosis is a description, but it is by no means your destiny. And it explains what someone has observed about you and about your body and about what's happening in your body, but it doesn't always explain why it happened. And that is a really important question, because when you know why it happened, you can change things. And it never tells the whole story of just that diagnosis or just those symptoms or just, that. And that's why I always encourage people to become very, very curious, and be curious to the point of being that detective for yourself. And never to be fearful, but always curious, because curiosity opens doors that, quite honestly, fear is going to keep closed. So when you start asking, what could my body be telling me? Those are very different conversations to have with yourself. And they often lead to very different outcomes, right? And as a health coach, I meet people who have spent years collecting diagnoses. Sometimes they arrive carrying like a list of them. They come to me and they have 4 or 5 all listed down. And I'm not diminishing the diagnoses, because every one of them matters. But what often really matters even more is that the story of the questions that I posed earlier, that's connecting them together, because our bodies don't operate in isolated compartments, right? all of our systems are connected. And so, stress affects digestion. Digestion affects your hormones. Hormones can affect your sleep. Sleep affects your blood sugar. Blood sugar affects inflammation. And so everything is connected, and every one of the systems in your body is connected in some way. And that's why we look for patterns instead of isolating problems, or doing the diagnoses or playing whack-a-mole with symptoms, because it isn't about those symptoms. It isn't about that diagnosis. It's about the whole picture, and the story really becomes so much more clear at that point. So This week, I'd love to invite you to do something very, very simple. Take out a journal, piece of paper, pad of paper, whatever you like to write on. And if you have a diagnosis, write down your diagnosis or diagnoses at the top of the page. And then underneath that, write just these three words, or just these words, this is something I have. It's not who I am. And then ask yourself the questions like, who was I before the diagnosis? What did I love? What brought me joy? What dreams have I quietly put on hold because of this said diagnosis or diagnoses? Because healing isn't only about improving your lab values and getting them all in the, normal range, if you will, or it's not even about reducing symptoms. Sometimes healing also means rediscovering who you are and who you want to be. And so here's today's clue to consider. Your diagnosis may explain part of your story, but it's never going to write the ending. You get to write the ending. Well, actually, no, somebody else writes the ending. But you have choices. One choice, one habit, one day at a time. And so just take that all into consideration for this week. And I want to thank you for spending a few more moments with me today. It's a pleasure. Like I said, I'm rebranding. I'm kind of my message is a little bit different because I want people to understand that when you start looking at things differently and your health differently, things begin to change for you and you can really make a difference. So if today's episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. I'd love for you to leave a review or share it with somebody that might need to hear this, that they are so much more than their diagnosis. And if you're ready to begin connecting those dots in your own health journey, I have something that I've created. It's not ready to be launched yet, and I will make an announcement when it is. But it's something that's helped. It's designed to help you slow down. It's designed to help you notice the patterns for yourself and begin to understand, exactly what is your body trying to tell you and what has it been trying to tell you. And so I'll leave you with this. Remember that every symptom has a story, and every story deserves to be understood. And so until next time, stay curious, listen well to the questions and listen well to your body, and take one small step toward understanding the story behind your symptoms. I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for spending time with me today. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little hope and a little understanding. And remember, you are not your diagnosis. Your body isn't broken. Every symptom has a story. Every body leaves clues. So, stay curious, trust the process, and together we'll understand. Until next time, take good care of yourself.